You know, COVID has brought a lot of unexpected things to our society. Many of us as performers learned how to Zoom, which we knew nothing about. Many of you learned how to Zoom, which you know nothing about. But Zooming had some unexpected side effects. Our next performer, Janel Behm, decided she was going to start Zooming with storytelling guilds throughout the United States. So because she didn't have to travel there, she was able to get on Zoom and attend monthly meetings, which she really enjoyed. Of all the guilds that she enjoyed, the North Carolina Storytelling Guild was the best. Because we are the most awesome, we are the most compassionate, we are the most, give me a word, fun, wonderful, splendiferous, welcoming. Yes, and we welcome you to consider joining us too. Well, it's because of her involvement with our guild that we said, hey, come on up here and tell some stories. Now, a lot of her stories come from ancient cultures. And the story today is an old folk tale. And we know that those old folk tales, if you really dig deep, they're pretty complex. This is a story of men and women. What could be more complex? Please help me welcome Janel Behm.
Thank you, Linda. Deep inside each one of us, there is an ancient place where stories touch us and connect us all together. In that place, there was a kingdom, and at the center of that kingdom, there was a king and a queen. They were kind and gentle people, but at night, a heavy sorrow laid in the bed between them. And the nature of that sorrow was easy to understand because, you see, the queen could not have a child. And one day, driven by her longing and her grief, she left the castle and went out into the forest, deeper and deeper, until she stopped to rest upon an old oak log in front of an even older oak tree. And from that tree, there emerged an old woman. "What troubles you, my child? I see your heart is heavy." The queen told the old woman of her situation and her sorrow. "Ah, easily mended. Tonight you must go out to the northeast corner of your garden. Take with you a cup. Speak your longing into the cup and place it upside down upon the ground. The next day when you go out and lift the cup, there shall be 2 flowers, a red and a white. Whatever you do, eat only the white flower." And with that, the old woman melted back into the tree. Well, the queen did exactly as she was told. She went back to the castle. She waited till night. She took a cup out to the northeast corner of her garden, and she spoke her desire for a child into that cup and set it upside down upon the dark soil. The next morning, when she went out and lifted the cup, there was a red flower and a white flower. And she saw those flowers, and she remembered the old woman's words, but she felt the longing in her heart. And she looked at both of those flowers, and she scooped them both up and gobbled them both down. And immediately, she knew she was with a child. The next 9 months passed rather unremarkably until it came time for the queen to give birth. She was up in the room in the tower where these things are done. The midwife was there. The women were there singing songs to welcome the new one into the world. There was a cry and a push from the queen, and into the midwife's hands there came, oh, not a child, but a small black snake. The midwife looked at it in disgust and horror, and she hurled it out the window. Another cry and a push from the queen, and into the midwife's hands there came the most beautiful baby boy you would ever hope to imagine. And that little prince was the delight of the entire kingdom. And the next 17 years passed quite happily, until it came time for the prince to go out and seek his own bride. He mounted his horse, bid farewell to his parents, and off he rode to find his bride. But the first crossroads he came to, up there came a great black snake. It hissed at him. It clashed its fangs. Older brothers marry first. And the horse reared up. The prince turned it about and went a different direction, but the next crossroads he came to, older brothers marry first. And on it went throughout the entire day, until there was nothing left to do except to turn around and go back to the castle. And when the prince arrived at the castle, he called for an audience with his parents, the king and queen. What can you tell me of the night I was born? Well, we were up in the tower. The midwife was there, women singing. Nothing remarkable, son. So they called for the midwife. Midwife, what can you tell us of the night the prince was born? We were up in the tower. I was there. Women singing. Well, there was this black snake, milady, but oh, it was a frightful thing. It was horrid, and so I threw it out the window. So the king and queen went back into their chambers to consider, and they concluded that, in fact, this was the firstborn prince of the kingdom. And so they called for the poets and the minstrels, and they sent them out to woo the serpent prince back to the castle. And they prepared a place in their home for him. And when he returned to the castle, they sent out word to the surrounding kingdoms that indeed the eldest prince of the kingdom was prepared to be married. And for a time, princesses from the surrounding kingdoms came to the castle and offered themselves in marriage to the prince, not knowing who he truly was. But each time, the next morning, when the king and queen went to the wedding chamber to check on the young couple, there were just bones scattered on the floor. Clearly, the prince had eaten her. And on it went like that until the castle got a reputation. And there were no more princesses coming to be married. And that's why it came as such a surprise to the king and queen when they received yet one more offer of a woman to be married to the prince. But this was not a princess from a surrounding kingdom. Oh, no, no, no. This was a shepherd's daughter from within their own lands. Now, normally they never would have considered this, but desperate times. And so they sent word, yes, the prince will marry you. Now, this shepherd's daughter, She had a long-standing relationship with the land, and the forest was her old friend. And when she heard that she indeed was going to marry the prince, she went running to her friend, deeper and deeper into the forest. "What have I done? What was I thinking?" Until she stopped to rest upon an old oak log in front of an even older oak tree. And from that tree there emerged an old woman. "What troubles you, my child? I see your heart is heavy." And the shepherd's daughter told the old woman of her situation and its likely outcome. Easily mended. You must send word to the castle that you require a year and a day to prepare for the wedding. In that time, you must sew 12 wedding shirts, like a nightshirt. And on each one, in the place over your heart, you must sew a beautiful and intricate design. In the wedding chamber, have ready a bath of lye, 2 steel scrub brushes, and a bath of milk. And with that, the old woman melted back into the tree. Well, the shepherd's daughter did exactly as she was told. She sent word to the castle. She required a year and a day to prepare. And in that time, she gathered and did everything as the old woman had instructed. The year and the day passed, and the shepherd's daughter came to the castle. She and the serpent prince were wed. And when the door to the wedding chamber was closed, he turned. "Take off your clothes. I will take off one of my nightshirts if you will shed 1 layer of your scales." Now, no one, his whole life, had ever spoken to him like this before. No one had asked him to do this. Agreed. And so she took off one of her nightshirts, and he scraped and scratched and twisted and turned, and he shed a layer of his scales. And let me tell you, it was painful. And when he had finished, "Take off your clothes. I will take off another one of my nightshirts if you will shed another layer of your scales." Agreed. And so she took off the shirt, and he twisted and turned and scraped. And if you thought that first layer was painful coming off, that second layer was excruciating. And on it went, all through the night, through all 12 nightshirts, until he was no longer a great black snake, but just chaos on the floor. And she picked up that chaos, and she put him into the bath of lye and took the steel scrub brush, and she began to scrub. And soon enough, she began to see the face of a young man banished 17 years before. And when that steel scrub brush got dull, she set it down and picked up the second and scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed until she had scrubbed away everything that was not the prince. And she helped that young man out of the bath of lye. And when she saw his true self, raw and tender and vulnerable, her heart was transformed with love for him. And she eased him into the bath of milk and soothed him. The next morning, when the king and queen came to the wedding chamber, they expected to see what they had seen every time before, just bones on the floor. But instead, when they opened the door, they saw a young couple in radiant contentment. Now, what happened to that couple after that, I can't tell you. But this I can tell you. Deep inside each one of us, in that ancient place where stories touch us and connect us all together, in that place, there is a woman with an educated heart and a man who has learned to shed his scales. Thank you.